Welcome back. You're watching Storyboard. Lucy Green, Worldwide Director, Innovation Group JWT, seemed thrilled about the introduction of Innovation Lions at Cannes this year. When I spoke to her, she mentioned how she felt spoiled for choice when it came to choosing her favorite entry. I caught up with her and spoke to her about many things, including spotting trends and how her role is increasingly becoming important in the agency setup. Lucy, it's so good to have you on the show today. You must be delighted with the Innovation Lions. Which are the entries that you really liked this year? And what is your opinion on the winners?
So there have been some really interesting winners this year, and they're all interestingly from predominantly from the big tech giants, from Apple and from Google. I particularly loved Apple's Liam robot, which is a new device which Apple have created as part of their sustainability effort to take apart phones so that they can be more effectively recycled. Because when you think about the churn of how many phones we're going through and how many people in the world now have smartphones, that really is creating quite a big carbon footprint. The other thing I thought was really interesting was Google's Tilt Brush, which is a virtual paintbrush that they've created. But in general, we're seeing innovation in not only these new tools with virtual reality, augmented reality, but creative use of data to be more intuitive and make things more seamless. Yeah. So the Postal Service did an addressless, a voice-powered address initiative too.
Lucy, with so much of data flowing in, is it more difficult or easier to spot trends?
Right, so data is really everything at the moment, everything and everywhere. There's never been more data being produced by consumers as more and more things become connected to the internet. So in one sense, that gives us a really accurate and nuanced picture of consumer behaviour. But the other thing about it that's quite interesting is that it's all quite near term. So social listening is a great tool for finding out sentiment that's bubbling to the surface right now. But in terms of having a pipeline or a vision toward behaviours and important trends in a 3 to 5 year, it's less helpful. So it's more helpful understanding when something is reaching critical mass or something that you should act upon right now.
You know, how important is trend spotting in the communications business, A, for the agency, and B, for clients?
We see it less as trend spotting. Trend is a really sort of fat word, actually, when you think about it. It can mean a lot of things. There are trends on the catwalk and there are trends in lipstick shades. We think of trends on a much bigger scale. We think of trends as almost zeitgeist and connected to culture, connected to visual language, connected to economic data. And that sense of trend is really important. It's about understanding consumer change from cohorts to different generations and different markets. It's about looking at culture changes from music and so on and understanding how that ladders back to consumers and what they'll want, how they'll want to be talked to. But it's also important to look at trends in the purer sense, at trends and innovation in different sectors. So the future of retail, the future of beauty, and how that connects to, again, the consumer behaviour. And by understanding that, you can create more accurate and more timely campaigns that are more in sync and compelling with consumers.
So, you know, you did a very interesting thing last year where everyone comes up with a report, but you guys had a magazine, a women's magazine.
Right.
How did that work?
So last year we launched this magazine called Glass in collaboration with Getty Images, the visual trends department at Getty Images. And the idea for that came after we did a study on the future of women. We did this study looking at the future of women from beauty to health to bodies to work to children and all of that, lots of the entire picture. And we were trying to think of a creative way to bring that to life because a lot of trends can seem quite nebulous to brands. And when we started looking at the key mediums that women consume every day, women's interest magazines seemed like a key thing to look at. So when you think about women's interest magazines, you think that they should be a mirror to what is happening with women right now. But when we started to look at traditional women's interest media magazines, the glossy magazine, what we actually found was that they were really quite distinct and getting further and further away from what we were seeing in our study. So as an experiment, we created this magazine, Glass, with Getty, and every single aspect of it was inspired by insight and trend forecasting. So From the pictures in it that we used with Getty and worked with them on, to the products that we featured, to the people in it, it was all informed by insight.
Yeah. You know, how do you figure out whether a trend is a global trend or whether a trend is a local trend?
That's a really interesting question. One thing to point out actually is that the whole trend map has really changed in recent years. So trends in general are becoming more global, and where they might start in the US or the UK or even Seoul or wherever, that's another thing. They're coming from more global regions now as opposed to established markets. But they're reaching critical mass and going global much, much faster than they would have before, and that's thanks to the internet and social media. But we are seeing the rise, because of the internet and social media, of actual global trends. So when you look at Generation Z, for example, they're the first digital natives. One remarkable thing about them we found is they are actually perhaps the most globally minded and globally similar generation today. So millennials vary by region, but they're quite similar globally. But, you know, Netflix has been talking recently about how it now does global launches of entertainment because there are now global tastes. But in general, what I would say is trends are coming from anywhere now, not from the traditional sources, and they're going global much, much faster.
Yeah. How does, trend spotting lead to your, insights function?
Trends are slightly different from what planners do. So if a planner is about looking at the market right now, and what consumers en masse are doing right now and coming up with a strategy for that. My group is looking at more towards the future and emerging sentiment. So we look for signs of fast-growing changes in attitudes that we think will become more and more prevalent with consumers and relevant to brands farther down the line. So if planning is about knowing and really resonating with consumers right now, we're about the next.
Yeah. And finally, can you share examples of trend spotting which have really helped your clients?
There's a couple of big trends that have been really interesting to our clients. I mean, on an ongoing basis, we're looking at Generation Z, and they are 12 to 19-year-olds because they are really the pipeline youth consumer. Brands took a long time to sort of understand and market toward millennials, and now millennials are having mortgages and babies and buying houses and investing. Generation Z are the next youth cohort that brands really need to get to grips with, and so we've been doing a lot of ongoing research for our clients to really understand what makes them tick, what's different about them, how they want to be spoken to, because that's going to be your consumer in 3 to 5 years' time, if not already, if you're a youth-oriented brand. We also have been looking a lot at the political consumer. We did a study late last year called The Political Consumer about how increasingly, not just in relation to elections, as you'll know as well, but in relation to personal circumstance, age, race, gender, sexuality, people are viewing the world and brands in a much more politicised way and calling out brands that don't speak to them in a way that is responsible and ethical. They're expecting brands to have a political point of view as well as being benefactors and thought leaders. So we've been looking a lot at what the role for brands is in this politicised atmosphere.
All right, thank you so much. Thanks for speaking to us.
Thanks very much.
With that, it's a wrap on Storyboard this week. You can catch all our content on Facebook, Twitter and YouTube. Thanks for watching, and we'll be back same time next week. See you soon.